June 6, 1944. 4 million of people across Europe. It began as just another gray morning under Nazi occupation. Along the coast of Normandy, French fishermen watched rough waves crash against the shoreline. German sentries stood inside concrete bunkers, scanning the horizon through binoculars. Many believed the bad weather had guaranteed another quiet day. But beyond the darkness of the English Channel, something unimaginable was already in motion. More than 5,000 ships cut through the rough seas. Thousands of aircraft filled the skies. Nearly 160,000 Allied soldiers were preparing to land on the beaches of France. It was the largest amphibious invasion in military history. This was D-Day. Within the next 24 hours, the fate of Nazi Germany, and perhaps the entire world, would begin to change forever. For years, historians have asked one question. Germany possessed experienced soldiers, heavily fortified defenses, powerful tanks, and occupied almost all of Western Europe. So why did they fail? Why couldn't one of history's strongest military machines stop an invasion they had expected for years? The answer isn't a single mistake. It was a chain reaction of bad decisions, overconfidence, deception, poor communication, and missed opportunities. Some of those decisions were made months before D-Day. Others happened in only a few critical minutes. And together they sealed the fate of Hitler's empire. Today we're uncovering the real reason Germany failed on D-Day, and why June 6, 1944 became the beginning of the end for the Third Reich. Chapter 2. Hitler knew the invasion was coming. Contrary to popular belief, Germany wasn't surprised that the Allies planned to invade Western Europe. In fact, Hitler had been expecting it for nearly 2 years. After the United States entered World War II following the attack on Pearl Harbor, Germany understood that a massive Allied invasion of France was only a matter of time. The question wasn't if, it was where. Stretching from Norway to the Spanish border, the Atlantic coastline became Hitler's greatest defensive project. He ordered the construction of what became known as the Atlantic Wall. Thousands of bunkers, concrete gun emplacements, minefields, steel obstacles, artillery batteries, anti-tank barriers, millions of landmines. More than 500,000 forced laborers worked on this enormous project. On paper, it looked nearly impossible to penetrate. German propaganda proudly described it as an unbreakable fortress that would throw any invasion back into the sea. But appearances can be deceiving. Despite its intimidating reputation, much of the Atlantic Wall remained unfinished by the summer of 1944. Many defensive positions lacked ammunition. Some heavy guns weren't operational. Several coastal sectors were defended by undertrained troops or older soldiers considered unfit for frontline combat. Resources were stretched across thousands of miles of coastline. Germany simply couldn't defend every beach equally. And that weakness would soon become fatal. Chapter 3. The Man Who Saw the Danger. One German commander understood the problem better than almost anyone else. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. Known worldwide as the Desert Fox for his brilliant campaigns in North Africa, Rommel inspected France's coastal defenses in late 1943. What he found alarmed him. He immediately realized the Atlantic Wall wasn't nearly strong enough. The Allies dominated the skies. They possessed overwhelming naval superiority. Once Allied troops established even a small foothold on French soil, German reinforcements would struggle to reach them. Rommel believed the invasion had to be defeated on the beaches. Not days later. Not inland. Within the first few hours. If Germany failed to destroy the invasion immediately, he believed the war in Western Europe would likely be lost. His solution was straightforward. Build stronger beach defenses. Lay millions more mines. Flood low-lying fields. Place tanks close to the coastline. Turn every possible landing area into a deadly trap. Rommel worked tirelessly. Thousands of wooden stakes were driven into beaches. Explosive obstacles filled the sand. Entire villages became defensive strongholds. But there was one problem. Not everyone agreed with him. Chapter 4. A Fatal Argument. Inside Germany's military leadership, a dangerous disagreement was unfolding. Rommel believed tanks should remain near the coast. The moment Allied soldiers landed, German armored divisions would launch immediate counterattacks before the invasion could gain momentum. Another senior commander, Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt, strongly disagreed. He argued that tanks positioned too close to the coast would become easy targets for Allied naval bombardment and constant air attacks. Instead, he wanted Germany's armored divisions held farther inland. They would remain as a strategic reserve, ready to strike wherever the main invasion occurred. Both arguments had merit. But Hitler refused to fully support either plan. Instead, he created a confusing compromise. Some Panzer divisions answered directly to Rommel. Others reported to Rundstedt. The strongest armored reserve remained under Hitler's personal control. That meant no commander could deploy those divisions without Hitler's direct authorization. It was a bureaucratic nightmare. In theory, Germany possessed some of the most powerful tanks in the world. In reality, they were trapped by paperwork and conflicting chains of command. On the morning they would be needed most, every minute would matter. And Germany had already built delay into its own response. Chapter 5. The greatest deception of the war. While Germany strengthened its defenses, the Allies were planning something even more dangerous. Not another army. Not another weapon. A lie. One so convincing that it fooled Hitler himself. The operation became known as Operation Fortitude. Its goal was astonishingly simple. Convince Germany that the real invasion would occur somewhere other than Normandy. The Allies chose the Pas-de-Calais region, the narrowest point between England and France, as the perfect target for deception. Everything was designed to support this illusion. Inflatable tanks, wooden airplanes, fake landing craft, dummy fuel depots, artificial radio traffic. Entire phantom armies existed only on paper. Perhaps the biggest part of the deception involved one of America's most famous military leaders, General Georges Patton. The Germans respected Patton as one of the Allies' most aggressive commanders. When intelligence reports suggested Patton was preparing forces opposite Calais, German leaders naturally assumed the main invasion would follow. It was exactly what the Allies wanted them to believe. Double agents secretly working for Britain fed carefully crafted information directly into Germany's intelligence network. Every report reinforced the same conclusion. Normandy wasn't the real target. It was merely a distraction. The decisive invasion would come later. Hitler believed it. His generals believed it. Even after thousands of Allied soldiers landed in Normandy, many German commanders remained convinced the real attack had yet to begin. That single deception delayed critical German decisions during the most important hours of the war. And the consequences would be enormous. Chapter 6. The night before the invasion. By the evening of June 5, 1944, the weather over the English Channel was miserable. Powerful winds battered the coast. Heavy clouds covered the skies. Rough seas tossed ships from side to side. To many German commanders, these conditions confirmed what they already believed. No sane military leader would launch an invasion in weather like this. The German high command relaxed. Several senior officers left their headquarters to attend military exercises or visit family. Others believed they had at least another week before the Allies could even consider crossing the Channel. But while German commanders were lowering their guard, thousands of Allied troops were climbing aboard landing craft. General Dwight D. Eisenhower had faced one of the hardest decisions of the war. Meteorologists predicted a brief break in the storm, only a few hours of acceptable weather before conditions worsened again. If the invasion didn't happen then, it might have to wait for weeks. Waiting carried enormous risks. Every delay increased the chance that Germany would discover the invasion plans. Eisenhower looked around the room at his commanders. Then he quietly said the words that would change history. Okay, let's go. Within hours, history's largest invasion force began crossing the English Channel. More than 7,000 ships. Nearly 12,000 aircraft. Thousands of tanks, trucks, artillery pieces, and landing craft. An entire army was moving toward occupied France under the cover of darkness. Germany still believed Normandy was only a diversion. That mistake was about to become catastrophic. Chapter 7. Why Germany couldn't respond. Just after midnight, the first reports reached German headquarters. Paratroopers had landed behind enemy lines. At first, many officers dismissed the news. The Allies had frequently dropped small airborne units during previous operations. Some commanders believed these were simply raids designed to create confusion. Then more reports arrived. Roads were blocked. Bridges had been captured. Telephone lines had been cut. German units reported fighting in multiple locations simultaneously. No one could determine where the main attack was coming. Communication began breaking down almost immediately. Telephone cables were destroyed. Radio traffic became chaotic. Messengers struggled to reach headquarters because roads were filled with confusion and airborne troops. Every commander was asking the same question. Where is the real invasion? Even before sunrise, German intelligence remained divided. Some insisted Normandy was the primary assault. Others argued it was only a distraction before the expected attack at Pas-de-Calais. This uncertainty proved deadly. Instead of reacting decisively, Germany hesitated. And in war, hesitation can be more dangerous than defeat itself. Chapter 8. Omaha Beach, a near disaster. While confusion spread through German headquarters, American soldiers were approaching Omaha Beach. No beach on D-Day would become more famous or more terrifying. The sea was rough. Many landing craft drifted off course. Soldiers became violently seasick before they even reached shore. Some tanks sank beneath the waves before ever firing a shot. As the landing ramps dropped, machine guns erupted from hidden bunkers overlooking the beach. Bullets ripped through the first waves of American infantry. Artillery shells exploded across the sand. Mortars showered the shoreline with deadly fragments. Within minutes, entire units were pinned down behind narrow strips of sand with almost no cover. For many soldiers, the only protection came from underwater obstacles or the bodies of fallen comrades. Some officers feared the invasion might fail. Radio operators sent desperate messages requesting reinforcements. Several commanders even considered evacuating parts of the beach. At that moment, Germany possessed its greatest opportunity to stop the invasion. But they never fully realized how close they were to victory. Instead of launching an immediate armored counterattack, German forces continued waiting for clearer orders. That delay allowed American soldiers to regroup. Small groups began climbing the cliffs using shell craters, narrow paths, and gaps in the defenses. Once they reached higher ground, they attacked German bunkers from behind. One by one, positions that had dominated the beach for hours began falling. The defenders fought fiercely. But they were isolated. Without rapid reinforcements, each strong point became increasingly vulnerable. By the afternoon, Omaha Beach remained chaotic. Thousands had been killed or wounded. Yet the Allies still held the shoreline. Germany's best chance to drive them back into the sea was slipping away. Chapter 9. The Missing Panzer Divisions. Across France, Germany's Panzer divisions represented its most powerful weapon. Tiger tanks. Panther tanks. Veteran armored crews. If launched quickly, they might have shattered the fragile Allied beachheads before enough troops and equipment arrived. But there was one problem. No one could move them. Some Panzer divisions answered to Rommel. Others answered to Rundstedt. The most important reserve belonged to Adolf Hitler personally. That meant commanders couldn't simply order them into battle. They needed permission. Hours passed. Field reports became increasingly alarming. More Allied troops were landing. Naval gunfire was devastating German positions. Fighter aircraft dominated the skies. Still, many senior leaders believed the Normandy landings were only the opening act. The real invasion, they insisted, would come at Calais. Because of that belief, several elite armored divisions remained exactly where they were. Waiting for an invasion that would never happen. Every hour strengthened the Allied position. Engineers cleared beach obstacles. Supply ships unloaded vehicles. Fresh infantry arrived by the thousands. Artillery rolled ashore. By the time German armor finally began moving, the opportunity to destroy the invasion had already begun to disappear. The delay wasn't caused by a lack of courage. It wasn't caused by weak equipment. It was caused by confusion, rigid command structures, and a deception operation that continued fooling Germany long after the first Allied soldiers stepped onto French soil. Chapter 10. Hitler sleeps. Perhaps no story from D-Day has become more famous than the claim that Adolf Hitler was asleep while the invasion began. The reality is slightly more complicated, but just as damaging. During the early hours of June 6th, Hitler was indeed resting at his headquarters. His closest aides were reluctant to wake him. They feared making a decision without certainty. More importantly, they feared making the wrong decision. Because Hitler personally controlled several elite panzer divisions, no one wanted to authorize their movement without his approval. So they waited. Some officers argued the invasion at Normandy might still be a feint. Others insisted they needed confirmation before committing Germany's strategic reserve. When Hitler finally became involved later that morning, valuable time had already been lost. Whether he was sleeping, unavailable, or simply receiving incomplete information, the result was exactly the same. Germany's strongest armored forces remained inactive during the most critical hours of the invasion. For soldiers fighting desperately on the beaches, those lost hours proved priceless. By the afternoon, Allied troops had established multiple beachheads. The window for throwing them back into the sea was rapidly closing. Germany still had powerful armies. But now, it was fighting against an enemy that had successfully planted itself in occupied France. And every passing hour made that foothold stronger. Chapter 11. Air power decides the battle. By the time the sun rose over Normandy on June 6th, Another battle was already being won, not on the beaches but in the sky. For years, the Allies had prepared for this moment by building overwhelming air superiority. Thousands of American and British aircraft controlled the skies above northern France. Fighter planes patrolled relentlessly. Bombers struck rail yards, bridges, fuel depots, and communication centers. Reconnaissance aircraft photographed every major German movement. The German Luftwaffe, once feared across Europe, was only a shadow of the force that had dominated the early years of World War II. Years of combat on multiple fronts had taken a devastating toll. Experienced pilots had been lost. Aircraft production struggled under constant Allied bombing. Fuel shortages meant many pilots received limited flight training. On D-Day itself, German aircraft were almost invisible. Many Allied soldiers later recalled seeing wave after wave of friendly planes overhead while rarely encountering enemy fighters. This imbalance had enormous consequences. Every German convoy moving during daylight risked immediate attack. Every tank column could be spotted from above. Every bridge became a target. Even when German reinforcements finally received orders to move toward Normandy, reaching the battlefield became a dangerous mission. Columns often traveled only at night to avoid Allied aircraft. The delays grew longer. Traffic jams stretched for miles. Destroyed bridges forced long detours. Every mile toward Normandy became another obstacle. Rommel had predicted exactly this months earlier that he warned that once the Allies controlled the skies, German reinforcements would struggle to reach the beaches in time. His prediction had become reality. Germany still possessed skilled soldiers and powerful tanks. But those weapons couldn't change the battle if they couldn't reach it. Chapter 12, Germany's Supply Nightmare. Wars are not won by courage alone. They are won by logistics. Every soldier needs food. Every tank needs fuel. Every artillery gun needs ammunition. Every truck needs functioning roads. By the summer of 1944, Germany's logistical system in France was collapsing under relentless Allied pressure. Months before D-Day, Allied bombers launched what became known as the Transportation Plan. Rather than focusing only on German factories, they systematically attacked France's transportation network. Railroad bridges were destroyed. Rail yards were bombed repeatedly. Locomotives were knocked out of service. Road intersections became craters. Fuel depots exploded in massive fireballs. The goal was simple. When the invasion came, Germany would struggle to move reinforcements quickly. That strategy worked better than the Allies had hoped. Entire German divisions found themselves stranded hundreds of miles away. Some armored units spent more time waiting for fuel than preparing for combat. Others became trapped behind destroyed bridges or blocked rail lines. Commanders requested ammunition that never arrived. Medical supplies were delayed. Replacement vehicles failed to reach the front. Even experienced German officers admitted that moving large formations through northern France had become painfully slow. Meanwhile, the Allies continued unloading thousands of tons of supplies every single day. Portable harbors, known as mulberries, allowed cargo ships to deliver tanks, trucks, ammunition, and food directly onto the beaches. Within days, what had begun as a risky invasion transformed into a steady flow of men and equipment. Germany was trying to stop a growing army. The Allies were feeding one. And every sunrise widened that gap. Chapter 13. The battle Germany could never recover from. By the evening of June 6th, one undeniable truth had emerged. The invasion had survived. The Allies had not been pushed back into the English Channel. Instead, they had established 5 separate beachheads across Normandy. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. These beachheads were still vulnerable. The fighting remained brutal. German forces launched determined counterattacks in the days that followed. Entire villages changed hands multiple times. Hedgerows became deadly battlegrounds where every field had to be fought for. The campaign in Normandy was far from easy. But the strategic picture had changed forever. Every day, more Allied divisions landed in France. More tanks rolled ashore. More aircraft filled the skies. More artillery strengthened the front. Germany simply could not replace its losses at the same rate. The Eastern Front continued consuming enormous numbers of soldiers as the Soviet Union advanced relentlessly from the east. At the same time, Allied bombers struck German cities almost daily. Factories were damaged. Oil production declined. Transportation networks continued collapsing. Hitler's empire was now fighting a massive war on multiple fronts against enemies with overwhelming industrial strength. D-Day didn't end the war overnight, but it made Germany's defeat increasingly unavoidable. Within weeks, Allied forces broke out of Normandy. Paris would soon be liberated. Belgium would follow. The Western Front had returned. And this time Germany would never drive it back. Chapter 14. The real reason Germany failed on D-Day. When people ask why Germany lost on D-Day, many expect a simple answer. They imagine one catastrophic mistake, one failed order, one decisive battle. History is rarely that simple. Germany failed because many small failures combined into one overwhelming defeat. Hitler underestimated the effectiveness of Allied deception. Operation Fortitude convinced Germany that the main invasion would come at Pas-de-Calais, causing valuable forces to remain in reserve long after the landings had begun. The Atlantic Wall looked impressive but was incomplete, unevenly defended, and incapable of stopping such a massive invasion by itself. Germany's command structure created confusion instead of speed. Rommel wanted immediate counterattacks. Rundstedt favored a different strategy. Hitler split authority between them while personally controlling key Panzer divisions. When decisive action was needed, bureaucracy slowed everything down. Air superiority belonged almost entirely to the Allies. German reinforcements struggled to move under constant attack from Allied aircraft. Destroyed bridges, bombed railroads, and fuel shortages turned every journey into a race against time. Meanwhile, Allied logistics operated on a scale Germany could no longer match. Every hour brought more troops, more tanks, more ammunition, more supplies. Perhaps the greatest lesson of D-Day is that wars are rarely decided by a single moment of heroism or a single act of failure. They are decided by preparation, by intelligence, by logistics, by leadership, and by the ability to make the right decisions under extraordinary pressure. Germany still possessed brave soldiers, experienced officers, powerful weapons, but courage could not overcome strategic mistakes. Powerful tanks meant little if they arrived too late. Strong defenses meant little if commanders believed the real attack was still coming somewhere else. D-Day marked far more than the liberation of one stretch of French coastline. It marked the moment the Third Reich permanently lost the strategic initiative in Western Europe. From that day forward, Germany fought not for victory but for survival. Less than 11 months later, Berlin fell. Adolf Hitler was dead. The Third Reich surrendered unconditionally. The longest day had become the beginning of the end. And nearly 80 years later, D-Day remains one of history's greatest reminders that even the most powerful military machine can be defeated, not by one mistake, but by many, all happening at exactly the wrong time. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more in-depth stories about World War II military history and the battles that changed the world, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. History isn't just about dates, it's about the decisions, sacrifices, and moments that shaped our world. Every week, we bring you cinematic documentaries backed by historical research, immersive storytelling, and unforgettable battles. If this video gave you a new perspective on D-Day, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear which World War II event you want us to cover next. If you found this documentary valuable, please leave a like and share it with someone who enjoys military history. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next documentary.